Welcome back to the Global Marriage Booster. Representing China on our Global Marriage Summit is Dr. WeiJen Huang. Dr. Huang is an internationally renowned clinical psychologist, marriage expert, and marriage educator. His life's passion is to serve the Asian community, many of whom are struggling with emotional pain, but normally shy away from necessary mental health support due to cultural stigma, financial difficulty, or lack of well-trained Asian therapists. Although Dr. Huang presently resides in the States, and he's a faculty member at Northwestern University's School of Medicine, he still spends much of his time in Asia and has trained over 30,000 Asian mental health professionals in over 10 countries. By now, Dr. Huang has already helped over 200,000 Asian families worldwide. Amazing. Today he is joined by his wonderful wife, Shuyen. Dr. Shuyen is a prestigious research chemist and has taken an early retirement in order to team up with her husband. Together, they are changing lives and they are changing marriages on a global level. Thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules. It is an honor, it is a privilege to spend this time with you. And we want to hear about your experiences and your life mission. We're so excited.
Yeah, we are humbled by this, your introduction and this invitation. Because in fact, I'm an ordinary person, very ordinary. The only reason I'm still here is because every time in life when I encounter the storm, somehow God sent an angel through one smile, one look of affirmation, one word of wisdom. They inspire me to stand up and keep going. And excuse me, I consider myself one of the luckiest Chinese psychologists, and to have opportunity to be trained by so many giants in our field. And I just feel like that this is, I don't deserve such a wealth of knowledge. I just love to learn. I just love people. And I just feel like that I have obligation to take what I learned to give it back to 20% of the Earth's population. And lots of people are struggling. We Chinese people, we have intention to love, but unfortunately, intention never lead to the good outcome. And that's where we need to be humble and to learn. And we saw so much pain around us. And yet, Chinese people, because of the cultural, the concern about the stigma, the face issue, the expensive psychotherapy, and also not enough well-trained therapists to help. So traditionally, Chinese people just resist to seek help, even if they got depressed, addicted, domestic violence, and then hurt themselves and hurt other people. They don't want to go until too late. And so I just think that my experience is that I cannot stay in the ivory tower, the privilege of the private psychotherapy room, waiting for people to pay high fee to come to see me. And when they come to see me and other professionals, they are highly defended because they are forced to come. Yes, you can give them some medication to help, but pills do not teach skills. You need to give them something and inspire them to be willing to learn. So my metaphor is that when they come to professionals, say that their bottle is empty, they really need water. But even if you bring the water, the bottle under Niagara Falls, if the cap is on, nothing can get in. But my experience has been that because I know that I need to go out, I need to use the language that people can understand. And after I go out, Chinese people, it's very, very important to use the right brain, metaphors, stories, to engage them. Once when I'm able to bring to them and to paint a word picture for them to see things that they can relate. For example, the father loved the son so much. And then the Chinese tradition is that you got to study hard. You got to listen to your parents' words. And when the son was being disobedient, then the father and son had such a big fight. They had to call police because the son smashed the window. And you can see how the wife got caught in the middle, how painful she is. But through learning, the father was able to, through the psychoeducational program, they won't go to homotherapy. But when they have the pain, they have the need, they are willing to learn, and then we can see the outcome after this kind of humble learning, willing to develop emotional intelligence, out of love, willing to understand his son, and learning how listening is loving, empathy brings healing. That's our motto for everybody. And when the couple continue to learn in the small groups, then now the son comes home. The son went away for college. When the son comes home, the son opened his mouth. He couldn't stop. He talked to his parents for 3 hours. From fighting to such degree to have emotional connection, And as you can see on our screen, the program's name is 亲密之旅, the journey to emotional affinity or emotional meaningful connections.
That's beautiful. So I'm going to, first of all, I want to ask you, marriage is under attack in the Western world. Do you find that in China or in the Far East, do you find that marriage is also under attack, or is marriage still the thing to do?
From my experience, I think I probably have a bit more experience than most of the people, because I'm given opportunity in different countries to serve. So I have opportunity to observe a little bit more. Yeah, but the whole world is, in a sense, the Asian world is following Western trend. Mm-hmm. That's what I can say.
Wow. So why is marriage still relevant in the 21st century?
I think the commitment is very important, because without commitment, I think the happiness could be a little bit insecure, or you feel that relationship can end anytime. So even like Dr. Huang and me, we are so different. I see myself. I should not. I think as we look at our marriage, I think that commitment is very important, because we have struggles, and most of the people, if there's no commitment, it can end anytime. So I think that feeling of security and that we are there for each other, I think that part is important. It's not just like it's like I can leave anytime if I'm not happy, not looking at what I need to improve myself to make this relationship better. Marriage is not like an employment, because I'm not happy with my boss. I can leave anytime. I don't have a commitment to this company. That's how I would see, like just having a partner, that is not a very meaningful or secure, but that's just my opinion. Okay.
Very good.
Yes.
Couples can fight, but just like your book said, we need to expect the storms. We need to be able to understand our weaknesses. Is this the person, despite this person have those kind of shortcomings, are you willing to spend the rest of your life with him or her? That's very, very important concept, because couple can have fights, but the key is that secure attachment. Is that question, the deepest human cry is, will you be there for me in times of danger, in times of crisis? When we have that reassurance, we have the ability to overcome any hardship. And fortunately, there are ways for us to, that you don't have to only rely on your willpower. There are ways, there are wisdom. You're willing to love is so important, but you also need the wisdom so that you commitment become very easy. Because just like Dr. Willa Hardy and Dr. John Gottman's, research about the emotional bank account, stuff like that, when we become mindful, when we not love harder, but love wiser, when we're able to understand what each other need. For example, now during the pandemic, we are lucky enough, we still have a forest preserve nearby. We walk every day. And I noticed something, we learn every day, I noticed something, even though I know cognitively a few days before, but that day I realized very, very clearly, because when we were walking and there was snow and ice on the ground, and Shuyen almost slipped and fell. And when I hold her, and she didn't fall, she was so happy. And that day I realized that, oh, yes, I pay more attention to that, because she can feel my love this way, that when she's in difficulty, when she's in danger, I'm there to support her. And she also become more sensitive of how I would experience her, that instead of like most Chinese people, we express love by services, right? But we need to know the recipient of love more and better, so that we can deposit $1, the other person's emotional bank account can receive 100. And that's something, just take humility and willingness to learn, and we can learn. And that's why we teach in our small groups. Everybody can be each other's teacher. And the small group have diversity. I learned all of those from my Northwestern's 5 therapy groups. I just love it, anyway, I better stop a little bit. Shuyen is reminding me, and she's my best.
That's funny.
I'm precise.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how, if somebody was given an option to rent an apartment for one day, right? The landlord only wanted one day and the renter only one day. Is the renter going to invest in that apartment? No. And for a year, a little bit, but when we buy an apartment, we invest. And you're right. It's that security, and it's knowing that we're going to be here for each other. And you talk about how you went through your ups and downs. My husband and I were married for 32 years, and we've gone through our ups and downs, and we're doing great. And it took us years to get to the place that we are now. Years of work, of bridging, and wonderful. It's not work, it's like, there were difficult times and so many wonderful times. But the point is just knowing that we're here for each other, and that we're going to plow through, really is what got us to where we are today. And and that's what you've been talking about. Can you share a little bit more about your challenges? You said you broke up a couple of times, you got back together. Can we break that down a little bit, so that people who are dating, people who are listening to your story, and they are maybe at a difficult moment in their marriage or in their relationship, can you talk a little bit about why you broke up and what it was that you needed to learn from the breakup that then gave you the strength and the clarity to move forward and commit?
We like each other, but soon after we get to know each other, everything she likes to eat, I don't like. Everything I like to eat, she doesn't like. And we're so opposite. And so we broke up, but she's such a nice person. And so we come back together, and the problem was not resolved. We break up again, we come back together, break up again, come back together. Normally, when people get into that kind of dynamic, 99% of time they break up. And we didn't even have counselor to help us at that time. I think through God's grace, there's some magical intervention. We can get into that late in the future. If we have chance, we probably don't have chance this time. But all of the psychological theory I learned later on, we had that experience first, and then I understood what happened in terms of that dynamic. And so we are very grateful we are able to work out. And I think we give a lot of people hope for people who struggle so much and can still come back together and continue to work on it. We're just very grateful. Shuyen, I don't know whether or not you want to add something about that.
I think when we were in the college, I don't think we know much about, how to be a healthy girlfriends and boyfriend. We'll just do a lot of things by instinct. So even at that time, I'm not rejecting him. It's just like, I don't know how to deal with him. It's not that he's not a good person. It's just, we are so different. And so I think as I look back, I would advise we need some mature people around us that we can talk to, and then seek their advice. But I think we need not just the mature, also wise, because a lot of time, even some people who appear to be like, adults, what I'm saying is like for college students, their parents or maybe their counselor, if they are not wise, they could provide like not a very good advice. So as I look back, I always tell people, I wish I had the knowledge as what we have now, or like Wei-Jen has said, he learned all these so-called depth psychology from our struggle when we were, in college, where we were dating. I'm just going to stop here, and then maybe Wei-Jen have more to say, or you have more questions. Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Wei-Jen.
you so much. That's beautiful. Yes. And Dr. Huang?
I have a lot to say, but let me be succinct. To be considerate to her and to you. I think mate selection is important, and learning skills is also important. In terms of, my student always ask me, how do I choose a good lifetime partner? I said that almost similar like you're choosing a lifelong friend. You got to have 3 Qs, 3 quotients. I said the person you get attracted to, the IQ is probably compatible, but you should look for the other 3. The first one is learning quotient. I'm not afraid of a person who is very confident. A lot of time confidence is based on the past experiences, successful experiences. I'm only afraid of a person in face of counter evidence and never acknowledge mistakes, never change. When a person have a humility, the humble heart, to know that he or she has the possibility of being wrong, willing to learn, is so important. So that's the first condition, LQ. The second condition is that you cannot be so self-centered. You need to develop room for 2. When we stand on the opposite side, there's an Arabic number in between us. I say it's 6, but you keep insisting it's 9. I need to give you benefit of doubt. I need to learn to do the perspective taking and try to see things and experiencing things from your perspective. From the roughness, we need to differentiate. And conflict is a form of differentiation. Crisis in Chinese is made of 2 characters, danger plus opportunity. And so we need to learn to develop emotional intelligence, that's EQ, to oversimplified. I have an Asian Indian students. When he grew up, all he has to do is to study hard. Eventually, he got scholarship, come to Northwestern. And then he only knows that when he is dating a girl, he's so happy. One day he's in the heaven, the other day he's in the hell. And he didn't know why. Eventually, they broke up. That's the time he woke up, because all through his life, he only need to study the left brain. He doesn't have to understand his emotion. Emotion need to be differentiated. So that's where the hope comes from. And then we have a lot of good emotional education programs, you know. And so when people are willing to learn from those emotional intelligence program, and just like what I said, you know, identify your feeling, identify your thoughts, your needs, and learn to see things from other people's perspective, get feedback. Through this kind of training, we can know ourselves better. We can understand. You know, I keep saying that in my program, we stress for two things. Lifelong learning, we need to learn to increase the ability for other people to feel loved, decrease the probability for other person to feel hurt. Because when we don't feel loved, it's not equal to other people have not tried. When we feel hurt, it doesn't equal to other people intentionally try to hurt us. So we could try to repeat those kind of message and give them experience to learn. So my first Q is LQ, learning quotient, humble, willingness to learn. Second Q is emotional intelligence, and that's people management, that's leadership skills training. By the way, for most men, if I talk about marriage education, they don't come. If I talk about leadership training, yes, they will come. I teach the same thing, right? And the third Q, most important, because when a person have LQ plus EQ, this person can be so successful, but this person can be the biggest con man or woman in life. They can sacrifice everybody else for his or her own benefit. I say the third Q actually is most important. I call that spiritual quotient. Basically, I have no heart to benefit at your pain, from your expense, your pain. Willingness to always find win-win. And in any program, I think a very, very important component is after you build up all of those skills, you got to have that forgiveness component for people to repair the deep ruptures. Otherwise, people's heart cannot get close. So let me stop here.
You know, I love what you said about conflict, that it's two characters, danger plus opportunity. That's brilliant. I love that. Can you talk more about that?
That's a Chinese character. I can even write it down for you. Maybe I can write it down and email it to you. It's such an important thing. Life things just happen. And perspective is so important. When we are able to develop a healthy perspective to reframe. For example, conflict really help us to differentiate. Anything with higher quality need to differentiate first and reintegrate. Okay, that, you know, we are the result of our single cell divide and integrate. Some become teeth, some become hair, some become heart, etc. Conflict help us to know, who am I? What's my priority? What's important to me? And what is important to you? The bigger the conflict, we call that, you know, the how should I say that? But anyway, we have a Chinese term for that. Yeah. But the bigger the conflict, the more it differentiates, help us to know you and know me. Because if we get back to the East-West therapy, the Asian need to work a great deal on boundary issue. Yes, Western world need to work on boundary, but particularly the Eastern world, because the concept of self is so much intertwined with the group. So the biggest conflict comes from, it's not because people don't love each other. People love each other to death. But there's so much fear and anxiety in Asian relationship. regular relationship is easy. You follow the rule, Confucius rule, then this should be okay. But when you get into intimate relationship, couples relationship, parent-child relationship, then a lot of stuff come in because we all have shoulds, so much shoulds. Okay, parents should sacrifice for the children. Children should be loyal and loving, obedient to parents, stuff like that. I'm sure every culture to have some degree of that, except that in Asian culture, it's very, very strong to a degree that I try to decode it if I can speak it in English. The decoding is that I have the need to give you something you may not want, but you must take it because I'm your parent. I have the need to be needed. I have the need to be appreciated, to be loved. So I have the need to give you something you may not want, but you must take it. If you don't, I feel offended. I'm going to punish you. But the problem comes. If you take it, you owe me.
Wow.
You are obligated to give me exactly what I want. Anything depart from what I want, I won't be satisfied. I'm going to keep beating you, use my authority to force you to give me exactly what I want. So that get everything messed up. And parents try to order the child who you can marry, who you cannot marry, who you can fall in love, who you cannot, what kind of career you should get in.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that that's the way it is now. In other words, that is the perspective now in most Asian families. That's the norm. That's the norm. Is that what you're saying?
How should I say that? That's 5,000 years of norm. It's changing because Eastern culture and Western culture is impacting each other. But as you know, something deeply in collective conscious, it takes a long, long time. So it's still there. So when we are working with Asian couple, it's so important to look at this issue of modernity versus traditionality. How much Western influence this person have experiences? Who are this person's friend and reference group? Where did they grow up? Stuff like that. What kind of language they speak? That assessment is very important. But the more traditional, the more we need to modify or the Western psychotherapy technique. Because lots of time it get into trouble because Asian family tend to focus on parent-child relationship much, much more than husband-wife or couple's relationship. There's a saying that, well, you can change your spouse, but you only have one mother. and some people just got caught in that kind of conflict. And that's thousands of years of tradition there. Of course, it's changing, but we always need to assess each individual, assess their environment, their system, etc.
Wow, wow.
That's what I mean by differentiation. We need to, from the roughness, to fine tune, have perspective to look at every question is where we look at.
Yes. So I'm wondering what do you think the strengths of Chinese families are, and what are the weaknesses of the Chinese families? How would you summarize that?
Okay. Would you like to say first, or you want me? Okay.
He's the expert.
No, I'm not. Every culture has its strengths and weaknesses. I would say that the strength in the Chinese culture is that in life, everybody would encounter lots of storms. And Chinese culture, Asian culture focus a lot more on obligation to help each other in times of danger. But the price we pay is this concept of self in relationship. Do you still have a healthy self? Are you allowed to have healthy self? But it's universal. We need to learn to balance self-definition with relatedness. Balance is the key. Just a different culture focus on different things, right? And for Asian culture, we tend to focus too much on relatedness. And therefore, in our program, when we started to help them to identify their own individual needs, particularly when we use psychodrama, a lot of times just the left brain start it's not really helpful, but psychodrama, skit for people to experientially to be able to see the pictures and for them to see. Sometimes I use a picture of the parents. They are so big, and yet for people to see parents' little child inside. Because when we either demonize parents or become a parentified child, the idealized parents, we cannot achieve, this is my reframing, in order to have the true love between you and your parents, in order to have the true harmony, to feel really close and feel loved, you need to allow your parents, for them to also feel loved. And the only way they feel loved is allow them to get back to their real self. They have a little child inside who wants to be respected, wants to be adored. And when they are being unreasonable, you cannot just let them bully you like that. They can always rule you, because if you let them bully you, even though that's wrong, you not only sacrifice yourself, you're hurting your parents, because you will be forever separated. Okay, if they use the violence, emotional violence in that way. So I talk to people that everybody, we need to develop our good inner parents inside. And the good inner parents is wise and loving and full of perspective. And how do you get that? You need all of the people on the trend of life, whoever you encounter, when you are willing to be humble, to have a loving heart, to appreciate everybody you encounter. They always have a story. There's something they can teach you. And when we use that kind of mentality, we always nurtured by other people. Then we develop our inner child. We, so much Asian people, so much needing to rely on other people's validation, societal, social desirability is such an important thing, reputation, etc. But when you are able to develop your inner good parent, you are less susceptible to that kind of emotional blackmail. I always say that it's so important to identify your own needs and take power back from those people who shouldn't control you. Because all of us, we want to be loved and respected. We need to leave family of origin initially and then come home one more time. You leave this initial bondage, because it's suffocated. There's no emotional nourishment inside. You need to leave to go to the 3Q, 6C, or emotional oasis. No time to talk about 6C, but basically that kind of nurturing place. Just like my therapy groups at Northwestern and all of the Journey to Intimacy small groups. You need to leave and find a safe place to develop your true self and develop wisdom and perspective. Internalize enough love and emotional nourishment. And then the final challenge is come back to your marriage, to come back to your family of origin. And at the same time, you bring in your allies with you. You just not come back to be killed one more time. You need to bring the new resources and wisdom to come back with you to save them, because they are emotionally starved. I use those kind of concepts and encourage everybody to learn. And one thing I differ from a lot of couples therapy approaches and psychoeducation program is we at least initially focusing a great deal on individual growth, because couples group is extremely difficult to do. Each couple, if they have a conflict history, it takes such a long time and resources to manage. When couple come to my program, I separate them. That with strangers, each person learn to grow and develop themselves to become more loving, humble, and wise. And when the couple have the same language, the same concept and same tool, when they come back together, it becomes much easier. And later on, maybe at a later stage, we can get the couples together. But initially, that individual growth is so important. That's our experiences.
Yes, yes, that's great. I oftentimes with my couples in my office, I will work with them individually and give them individual tools and also help heal each one's individual trauma. And then they can come together. That's so true.
Yes.
I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and really on behalf of all of our listeners who have had this privilege to meet you and to hear you and to experience you and to hear about the incredible work that you're doing out there. How can people find out more about you and keep involved and follow your work? Is there a way that they can be involved?
Currently, it's only in Chinese language because we're busy serving the 20% of Earth's population. But we're in the process of putting the English subtitle onto the video. It's a current process. So hopefully, not long from now, we'll have something available in English. And to contact us, maybe just the website. JTI is Journey to Intimacy, JTIinternational.org, right?
JTIINT.org.
And is there anything you want to say before we to our listeners? Any words of last words? Anything you want to say? Any words of hope to people sitting and listening?
I'll say short. It is a great opportunity for us to be able to just give the testimony of our marriage. And I think marriage needs to be worked on. Even there are differences, but I think as long as we have commitment to each other, it can work out. And also we need to learn, first of all, to become a healthy self, and then try to give the other one space, and also allow others to grow and respect each other. There are differences, but the differences should not be an obstacle for our marriage. I think the important is to treasure each other and to grow and learn and to love one another from a healthy perspective. So that will be my encouragement to people who listen. And then it's a great honor for me to be able to share this with you. And I want to bless you and your family, your marriage. And then I wish you happiness. Thank you.
Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a very loving and needed mission. And we have the same value. We feel honored to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. Really, thank you so much.
So many people are struggling, and we know that marriage is a hard work. Commitment is very important. Humility and willingness to learn is so important. But the fruit is so precious, so precious. I want everybody to know all of us have a beautiful little child inside. The little child goes through so much in life. And it's so important for us to learn to love our little child inside by willing to be humble, to become a lifetime learner, willing to love other people's little child, willingness to take out a highlighter to highlight the virtue, the good intention, the efforts of everybody we encounter. And because everybody have the power to hurt, but we also have power to nurture. And we cannot demand other people to change, but we need to first learn to become humble, realize we need each other, and then we can learn. Listening is loving, empathy brings healing, and to love is to bring out the best in each other. That's my final words. God bless you. Hannah, it's a pearl moment. And bless you, your family, and your project.
Thank
Very
you.
meaningful project.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, really. And all of our listeners just sending so much love to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.